Well, good evening. That's the interactive part. Good evening. Can you guys hear okay? Very good. Well, welcome and thank you for participating in the first of what will be several public meeting sessions for the City of Fayetteville's Cultural Arts Corridor. The corridor will link cultural attractions and activate the outdoor environment between Dixon Street and Prairie with recreational elements, public art, streetscapes, enhanced pedestrian paths, and gathering spaces. My name is Ruth Whitney, and I'm the founder and CEO of Veritas public affairs firm, and it's a great honor tonight to work with the city again, thank you, Mayor, and NBW Architects to serve as the public relations firm on this dynamic project. I have the pleasure tonight of serving as the evening's MC, and along with my colleague Nathan Green, will be available throughout the evening to provide assistance as we ask for your engagement and participation. There are really four components of tonight's evening. The first is the introduction of the team. The second is going to be the description of the project, its scope, its history, the timeline, and other information. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to ask you to spend what we call time at the boards. Some of you have already done that, so thank you. You've gotten a sneak peek already of the information in the back of the room. That is the time when we are asking all of you to provide interactive feedback about various elements of the design, and we'll talk about that again in just a few minutes. Finally, we'll have a closing session with questions and an opportunity to tell you about next steps. Folks, tonight's goal is to make sure that we hear from you. That's why we're hosting this. It's very important to the city. We want to hear your ideas, your feedback, your challenges, your very best thinking about the Cultural Arts Corridor. With that in mind, I know Nate described the survey, but we would ask you to either fill out the survey. We have one survey here tonight. There's a second survey, but both are available virtually, and you can go to the website. It's speakup.fayetteville, #AR.gov. Another easy way is to go to the City of Fayetteville's website, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. Click on the Cultural Arts Corridor. You'll be asked to provide an email, and you'll be registered automatically. And what that will have is a replication of what we're going to have tonight. So you'll be able to see it interactively. Please share tonight's experience with your friends, with your family, because the more engagement we have, the better. In addition, throughout the evening, I'd ask you to write down questions, things that come in your mind, thoughts, and ideas, so that we can share those at the close of the session. And so, now it's my great pleasure to introduce Mayor Jordan. Please join me in thanking him for his leadership on this project.
Good evening, everyone. Well, let's do that one more time. Good evening, everyone. Indeed. Let me ask you a question now. Don't you love this city? Absolutely. I'm a little excited tonight. As I always say, I would settle down, but I'm not gonna. But anyway, I want to thank you, Ruth, for that introduction. We appreciate you and the Veritas team. Let's give them a big round of applause tonight. I want to thank some people tonight because none of this could have happened without the people that's worked on this and all of you. But I want to thank Peter Lane for hosting us tonight at this fabulous Star Theater. I want to thank the Walton Family Foundation again for the Design Excellence Grant that made this project possible. I saw Kyle Smith here, but I want to thank a very great city council for approving this project. I want to thank Breck and the team at Nelson Byrd and Woltz for working on this project. I want to thank the folks on the steering committee tonight. I want to thank Molly Ron and her team at Experience Fayetteville. I want to thank the city staff, Peter Nierengarten, Susan Norton and team, for all their hard work on this. And I want to thank everyone for being here tonight as we envision this transformation project that will become our cultural arts corridor. We will look forward tonight on getting your input on this. You see, my friends, at the end of the day, I have served on economic committees with the National League of Cities and the United States Conference of Mayors. And I would travel to all these conferences, and they would talk about all the wonderful arts things going on in their cities. And we were in the middle of a recession. I don't know how many of y'all remember that, but I certainly do. And we couldn't afford to do much for the arts, but I thought, one day when we get out of this recession, we're going to start to build the arts in this city. That day has come now. And we're competitive with anybody in the United States on arts. And a lot of other issues as well. So, I will leave you with a quote from Thomas Wolfe that I read several of his books, but in one of his books he says, "Culture is the arts elevated to a set of beliefs." And I will tell you this, my friend, in this city, it's not what we market. You can market anything. But as I always tell folks, it's not what we market here. It's what we believe. And we believe in one another. And we believe in taking care of one another. And we believe in protecting the environment. We believe in driving the economic engine. By the way, the arts is the third leading economic driver in the United States right now. And we are on the spear of that. And we protect our environment. And we believe in those things. And I always tell folks, they say, "Well, Mayor, how do you get all those things done?" Well, I don't do much. You see, I'm just a product of this place. I know how they believe. And that's what we believe in. So I want to thank you tonight. I want to thank you for showing up and standing up. And tonight, let your voice be heard. And let's drive these arts to places it's never been driven before, and to take this city to a level it's never been at before. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Jordan. I'm making a note here never to follow you again in a series of speakers. My name is Peter Nierengarten. I am the Sustainability Director for the City of Fayetteville. I'm also the city's project manager for this project. And my job this evening is pretty simple. I'm here to introduce this fabulous design team that we have, who will be leading you all through the majority of this evening's activities. You heard just a little bit in terms of the background from the mayor's comments on the project. Funding from this project did come, 100% of the funding for the design of this project did come from the Walton Family Foundation's Design Excellence Program. The purpose of that program is to elevate design to the highest level here in Northwest Arkansas, and this particular project focuses on outdoor spaces and elements. The Nelson Byrd Woltz team was one of many firms that was already pre-qualified as part of the Walton Family Foundation Design Excellence Program. So why did we select them to be the designers on this particular project? Well, I have four kind of main reasons that we went through during our selection process. First is their project management skills. As we interviewed firms, it became very apparent that their professionalism and their attention to detail made them the right selection for the city of Fayetteville. We talked to owners of projects that they had previously designed and constructed, and we got very positive feedback. When we asked the question, would you hire this team again to design another project for you? Absolutely yes, was the answer that we received from those project owners. The project team, as you will soon see, they're very talented, gifted design professionals, and they're going to do a fantastic job for us. And then finally, we looked at some of their previous projects, and we traveled in particular to St. Louis and looked at a project called City Garden that they designed and was constructed about 9 or 10 years ago. And we were amazed with the attention of detail on that particular project. If you haven't been there and seen this project in downtown St. Louis, I recommend going up there because it's just fantastic. We really said to ourselves, wow, what an amazing public space with public interaction and so many different elements going on and so much attention to detail. We want to bring that level of design, we want to bring that attention to detail to Fayetteville. And so now we have them here, and it's our opportunity to allow them to design an amazing series of public spaces for us here in Fayetteville. So Without any more introduction, the Nelson Byrd Woltz team is here to take the mic.
How could we not be excited to be here and be kicking off this project in this way and with this community? Thank you to Peter and to the city and city council, the mayor, for the vision to help set up the project in this way that really allows us, encourages us, requires us to think at the big scale of how we can best improve and add to this already remarkable community. My name is Brett Gassinger. I'm a senior associate at Nelson Byrd Woltz Landscape Architects. We're based in Charlottesville, Virginia, if you've ever visited Central Virginia, tucked up against the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains. We also have an office in New York City, but we have the benefit, the advantage of working in a lot of different communities in both large and small and at a range of scales that takes us in a lot of great and exciting places. And that can be bewildering at times, really frustrating for my wife at times and our families. At the same time, we really get to know a lot of different communities and have that benefit of seeing the ways that people have solved these problems or created really exciting solutions. At the same time, that means that we have to be really good listeners. We have to actually be quite modest in the way that we learn from communities. We listen to the expertise that is present, and that's very much a part of the way that we approach our work. We have built a team that is top-notch both in expertise at the national level in the fields of civil engineering, in ecology, and understanding of architecture and social space, and also in a team that is rich with local experience. So that is pretty critical to getting to a lasting project that really makes sense. You'll get to meet many of us over the next several months as we continue on this journey, but I want to introduce several of the team that are here today. Our project manager is Zuzana Panza, and designer and in other cases also project manager Nathan Foley, and then one of our teammates that is representing both fields of architecture and urban design is Allie Thurman Quinlan of Flintlock Architecture, who's here in Fayetteville. And you'll get to meet others of us over the next several meetings and months as we move forward. So one of the things that's really important to us at Nelson Byrd Woltz, I just want to give you a brief introduction of how we approach projects. One common thread is that we really look to appreciate local ecology and the ways that ecology shapes how we inhabit a place. It is part of how our history has developed, how our communities have been founded and how they grow. Ecology is the underlying strata of our cultural heritage. And we feel that our responsibility as landscape architects is to tap into that deep history of ecology and cultural history and find ways to make that meaningful and memorable and relevant and visible within our public space. And that's the way to make places that really improve our civic life, whether it's a street, a park, a plaza, even at the smallest detail. And sometimes that kind of vision, like for instance here in this project in Watercolor, Florida, understanding that local ecology can form the entire backbone, the structure of that community, whether it's the parks, the streetscapes, the walking paths. It can teach the public and visitors about how that ecology works and create places of incredible beauty. Sometimes those projects are in quite urban environments where that native ecology might feel further away, but we find ways to bring that to bear to create places that are dynamic, encourage social interaction, different interpretations, and really add to the vitality of what it means to be in a city. Some current work that we're working on, both in Houston, we're working at Memorial Park, which is a massive scale urban park that is absolutely threatened by the impacts of global climate change. And so we're working through the technical challenges of how to envision a park that will last for hundreds of years into the future and play a role in the city ecology. Other times that technological expertise ends up creating whole environments like the project at Hudson Yards in New York, where the entire landscape is built on structure over an active train yard. That means that landscape is not just simply planting things, you have to construct it from the ground up. Those technical challenges also are maybe one end of the spectrum of the kind of work and collaboration and coordination that we're used to doing. But the other part is really understanding community and ways that our projects can help activate social space, that they can make lives better by understanding what people need in their neighborhoods, creating more walkable environments, creating spaces for gatherings and events, and like this ongoing project in Washington, D.C., this small 2.5-acre public park is creating all kinds of new opportunities for that community. But even as we are lucky to work in some distant places, we live and work in a community in Central Virginia that we feel very a kinship with Fayetteville. Charlottesville is similar in size. It has a historic downtown that is about a mile away from a major university. A lot of the dynamics of what are happening in Fayetteville, we feel a kinship to in Charlottesville. And I say that because both Zoo and Nathan and I, we're all homeowners in that community. We walk to work. We understand what we would like out of our own community. We realize its shortcomings. We're looking at Fayetteville and taking some hints back to Charlottesville. But we understand this scale of community because it's where we live and work. And I just wanted to share that with you. So next, Zoo's going to introduce you to the scope of the project as it exists. And the rest of the evening, we'll be talking about obviously, this is our first chance to talk. So we didn't come with designs. That'd be presumptuous and too quick. But what we want to do is tell you about the scope of the project as it's been given to us, and then introduce a few things that are important to us, the way that we see it, the way that the questions that we're asking, and some first impressions, and then we'll entertain that possibility for feedback. Thanks.
Thank you, Breck. It's so exciting to see the room full of people. This is going to be such an exciting project, and we are so glad to have this opportunity to work with you. The Cultural Arts Corridor has a very special location in the town of Fayetteville. It's in the heart of Fayetteville. It has a lot of potential, a remarkable potential to connect downtown to the university through its arts and cultural ideas and walkable connections as well. The fact that the Razorback Greenway cuts through it as well creates another connecting element within this district. To walk you through what our current charge is in terms of the project, it's essentially 4 different components, but we will be looking at the whole fabric of the corridor, which is bordered by Dixon Street. Oh, I'm not really good with this pointer. Dixon Street on the north, School Street on the east, Prairie Street, and Gregg Street on the west side. So our first charge is trail improvements, and that's not just the Razorback Greenway, but how it connects to the rest of the town and to the context of the community and the fabric of the city. There are great opportunities with the Greenway. It's used and loved by many people, but there are some challenges with street crossings, some great changes. It's being used by a lot of people, and we want to make it even more usable and visited and connected better to the rest of town. The second one, Fay Jones Parkland. It's rare that you have an opportunity to have a viable green woodland in the middle of your city. And the Greenway goes through it. It's located right next to the library, but it has very steep slopes, and it's invaded by invasive plants. There are security issues. You can't see through the canopy. So some of the opportunities are to improve the connections. Improve the connections from the library all the way down to Razorback Greenway, and also open up access to the creek as well. That is, we have walked it a couple of times, and it's impossible to get to the edges, it's impossible to see, but it's such a great amenity. Once you get down to it, it's beautiful, and to open up that access to everyone who is using the Greenway, people in the neighborhood, it's a great opportunity. Sorry. Streetscape enhancements, we are going to be looking at the fabric of the streets within the city, especially West Street, but all the cross street as well, and looking at improving pedestrian and bicycle connections, but also looking at any stormwater issues, any infrastructure issues that might exist, and resolving those as well. With the West Avenue and Dixon Street parking lot that's located actually just across the street from us, this is an opportunity to have a really active civic space that is essentially the center of this corridor. Just to talk a little more about our design process and our schedule, we are very early in design. We are here to listen to you. This is our first public meeting. We will have 2 more during our schematic design process, which is going to end, we are projecting in December, and that will be followed by rigorous technical documentation that will take us through 2019. And then I'll pass it on to Breck.
Yeah, so to look forward, we've got to look backwards first. And this place has a really fascinating history, and this corridor in particular. The Cultural Arts Corridor, the boundary there is shown a little bit in a white overlay. It really formed the edge of the original platted city of Fayetteville, which was when it was surveyed in 1835. And as the edge of town, it was probably wooded at first as it led down to the creek, and quite wild. It was the edge of town. It was not where the biggest buildings were built. But then the emergence and the coming of the railroad in the 1881 really created along the edge of town a vibrant and busy center of economic activity. This is where fruit was coming into town. Lumber was coming into town. It was becoming a place where those raw goods were being transformed. And this corridor still formed the edge of town, but was the place where there were sheds and workshops and barns, and the place of a lot of economic activity. And interestingly enough, we feel grateful that the way that the Razorback Greenway has been established, that it follows that train line, the St. Louis and San Francisco Railroad, but then also that Ozark and Cherokee spur that literally goes right by the new arts corridor to the south for the university. So imagine thinking back to that time where people were coming and going from this part of town. They would arrive here from distance from St. Louis, from Kansas City, Springfield, or were headed places to the south, to Fort Smith, and places west. And goods were being created and sold and shipped further. And that lent itself, I think the interesting thing to think about, especially now that we're talking about an arts corridor, is that these kinds of spaces, the edge condition, has become part of the identity of Fayetteville. That this is a place where there's experimentation, where there's learning, where there's new things happening, people are coming and going. And quite literally, as we'll find, some of those spaces become ideal kinds of places that are later transformed for arts and artists. Those kinds of uses lent themselves to certain kinds of architecture that was common in the area, but amenable to industrial uses and production. And later, that economic development really created the conditions for Dixon Street to emerge as a major viable commercial corridor. And the transformation from Dixon over the years, at once being a commercial district that was supported by the rail, then later as the rail declined, started to take on an economic vitality of its own that started to serve both the university and the downtown. Then later, with the emergence of the automobile, the competition with suburban development and shopping, there have been periods of both of thriving economic development and quite spare. And more recently, the anchor institution of the Walton Arts Center and its recent transformation has encouraged a rebirth of Dixon Street and the surrounding areas. So there's quite a whole story of the history of Fayetteville wrapped up in this small district. The conditions that really formed the vitality of that space led itself to the downtown master plan in 2004. And I don't know if any of you participated in that process, but I think it's really valuable and pretty unique that still here, 14 years later, a lot of these principles still apply and actually are helping guide even some of our thinking today. And that's pretty, that signals, one, that you had some good planning at that time, but that also that your city government has really ensured that the planning efforts here don't just sit on a shelf, but actually do spur change.
So art and culture. The corridor is already anchored by some key institutions, which one of them we are sitting in their space right now on the north side, and also surrounded by a number of other institutions, including the University of Arkansas Art and Design District, which is a very active, productive, and educational facility, and then downtown Fayetteville with its galleries as well. But you can see what's interesting is that the railroad, the rail line, is still one of the key structuring elements within the corridor. These key institutions start creating kind of these micro anchors within the corridor and outside of it. And you're probably familiar with all of them. Theater Square, which is under construction, Walton Arts Center, the expansion of the library, the active downtown First Thursdays, and the Art and Design District. But along with these institutions are a lot of smaller artist installations and artist supporting spaces that is something that balances the art and culture out in this district, and it really makes it really very special. The murals that you see, the small galleries that you can pop in, the small exhibitions, create a lot of potential for connection of all of these institutions and small art spaces in the future. And we imagine that this can be physical events, it could be event-based, they could all be tied together into a system of art installations, music events, both temporary and permanent for the future. And these are just a few examples of projects of different scales that we have worked on in the office, where we have worked directly with artists and with communities to develop these very active spaces which incorporated art, whether it was in the form of light, in form of sculpture, water, and also stormwater remediation, something that is very useful and practical, but can be also artful.
All right, thanks, Zoo. Urban ecology is another one of our big interests, as you heard from Breck in his introduction. Part of getting to know a place for us is always digging into that local ecology and finding out what's unique and interesting and cool to us. And we've only had a short time to dig into it, but we found some things that we find pretty cool. One goes back about 100 million years. And the fact that you'll see this theme play out in some of our thinking already, but Fayetteville as the edge. And 100 million years ago, it was coastal beachfront property of an inland sea. So if you look at the top right, let's see, here we go. And here, for a good amount of time, it was beachfront property. So that led itself to kind of what you see underneath the ground today. The underlying geology of Fayetteville is straddled between two regions, the Boston Mountains to the south and the Ozark Plateau to the north. And there's sort of this unique Fayetteville shale geology beneath us. So that is Fayetteville as an edge now down below the ground. That edge condition actually has led to a bunch of regional natural beauty and features that we find really inspirational. We hope to look back at these features of the surrounding region in our design work, but some of the beautiful pictures of places I'm sure you all are familiar with. Zooming in a bit at a more local level, the project here in pink actually has the ability to connect further natural areas through the city, so acting more as a corridor to link these large natural areas in the region. So even though we're a small piece of land in the city, it actually can provide some ecological benefit connecting to these larger patches. Zooming in a bit more, this is kind of extrapolating the corridor's position as a place to connect not only undeveloped natural hillsides and woodlands, but also the existing park networks and trails in the city, so that the trail network is enhanced, and we're really doing our best to connect those existing features here. As Zoo mentioned, a key opportunity here is the Faye Jones Parkland, which, as she said, is now choked out by invasives, but has a lot of mature trees and a beautiful woodland and potential for habitat there with a little bit of work. And what we really love doing in our work, and these are examples of projects that we've worked on, is just really highlighting and enhancing the local ecology, the horticulture of a place, finding ways to inhabit those zones and really create identity based around those ecologies and how we interact with them. Faye Jones' namesake is the local architect, Faye Jones, that many of you are familiar with, and we find it fitting that we're taking these ecological cues in our design work as he did in many of his buildings, and really building upon the rich ecological history of the Ozark region. Another aspect of this project are the connections and really the legacy of the Frisco Trail, being this north-south corridor that now connects all the way up to Bentonville, and is really a great legacy of the leadership of this city and the surrounding region to make that an intact, viable way of travel, recreational trail. But we think there's ways to enhance and even give more energy to that north-south connection and connect back across this corridor to downtown and to the university, to the new Art and Design District. So trail improvements to us, these are some more images of projects we've worked on, aren't just getting from here to there, but trails are multidimensional. They can help tell stories of place. They can help demonstrate local ecology and plant life. They could be on the ground, they could be elevated, they can be noisy, they could be quiet, they could be thin, they can be wide. So they can host events, you can have yoga. We're looking at these as multidimensional spaces, not just one way of using and inhabiting a trail. Streetscape enhancements also are multidimensional and multifunctional, and they can provide spaces for art, for events, for lingering, for rest, for shade, for gardens. They can be functional, and they can help store and treat stormwater. We're coming off a day and a half of a stormwater workshop here where we really walked the corridor to check out some of the problems that you all have in these big, heavy rain events in the Ozarks. So we know that streets can do more work than they're doing now, and we're hoping to explore that. Lastly, we know parking is important, but parking can be multifunctional, can be beautiful, can take different forms, and we just want to build on the last few years of really rigorous study and resources that the city has put into investigating downtown parking, analyzing it, getting your feedback, providing suggestions and solutions. But also we know it's an issue, and we know that's something we're going to address in this project, and we want to make sure that we're providing parking that suits the needs of the current businesses and institutions, but also looks forward to the visioning of this corridor and make sure that we're providing the right solutions for the future.
So the scope of this project really has the capacity to help build and add to the identity of Fayetteville. I mean, these can be places that people think of when they visit, that they want to come visit from far distances. This can be places that people and kids that grow up here think about when they go away and they want to come back to. This really has the potential to build on the identity of Fayetteville, and we want to hear a lot more about that from you tonight. We've given you some initial impressions of a bit of an outsider's perspective of some of the things that we've noticed, but we want to hear more about what you feel is representative of Fayetteville. What do you think of when you think of Fayetteville? Where do you think of? What places are important to you? What places do you remember? And there'll be some opportunities for sharing that later in just a moment.
Okay, so that's more or less our public presentation, but I wanted to give you a preview of what we'll be asking your input on back at the back of the room. So a lot of you had a chance to take a stroll around the room and see what we've come up with, but to give you a little bit more of a preview and the logic for what we've put together and what we're asking for, I'm going to just show you the boards up on the screen before you get back there. So instead of asking for specific input on the different project areas that Zoo outlined, we really wanted to kind of gather precedent images and examples of ideas in 4 different themes, because these themes might be used in different spaces throughout the corridor. And those themes are public gathering, and we've collected a range of ideas from around the states and the world of different scales and types of activities that could happen in those public spaces. Culture and art is another theme, and that's going to hopefully find its way into all spaces in this corridor. But that's everything from art installations to performance spaces to community identity, just fun installations in color and places for art. Recreation and nature can take on different forms, from games and play to canopy walks and trails, interaction with water, and mobility and connections. So that's clear, but it's more than just the trails and the streets, but what they look like, how we get from place to place, how you can occupy them. So those are the 4 themes of the precedent boards, and Ruth's going to give you a little bit more specific direction in a second. But we're asking for some feedback on the precedent boards. We also put together more for information, but also invite comment on scale comparisons. So I think maybe a lot of you aren't aware of the full scale of the corridor, how big it is, even that Fay Jones Parkland was a parkland. But so we put together some boards that really show the extent to which a bunch of different program actually can fit in these spaces. And so we divided them into parks and layered some parks that you may know over the space, particularly of the parking lot outside our doors. Also some smaller plazas in places that you may know or you may not know, but the scale of those plazas overlaid on this parking lot. And then again in the Fay Jones Parkland, some different park and stream examples and how they compare in size. So we welcome comment on those as well. And I'll turn it over to Ruth for a little bit more, well, there we go, a little more instruction.
Thank you. So there are really 2 elements of the feedback and interactive session that we'd like you to engage in. What I'd like to do is ask the first 3 rows of sitting in chairs to focus on the boards initially. So we're going to take a break for about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. You can get up, get a cup of coffee or water. And we'd like you to start with the boards, and each board, each individual, will get 4 stickers per board, as Nate described them. And we'd like you to take each of those 4 stickers and prioritize, as Nathan showed you, there are multiple images on each of those 4 main sections. So pick the 4 top parts of that board that you feel like best represent your likes, your favorables, the things that you prefer in that particular area, whether it's the culture and arts or the ecology or any of the other 2 boards. The second half of the room, starting on the 4th row here back, has a separate initial assignment. And what you'll see are comment cards as well as a very large map in the back. So we'd like you to focus initially on writing your comments about what you've seen tonight, things that come to mind, things that you like, your preferences, ideas, suggestions. Write your comments on the comment cards. And then as to the map, please take some time to look at the existing cultural arts corridor, where it is right now today. We'd like to hear stories about things that matter to you, about its current frame, what it feels like, how it looks to you, what you prefer, things that bring great memories to you of that particular space. And then once you've been through your section, your initial assignment, we're going to rotate. Does that make sense? Do I see a lot of head nodding? Is everybody clear? Okay, if you have any questions, you can always approach myself or Nate. What we're going to do is each of us are going to stand at the boards and at the map. And so if you have questions, please ask. We're also going to listen and take your feedback. So we're going to listen to your comments or get the aha moments. And all of this is going to come back by way of comments and information on the Speak Up Fayetteville site. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. So at this point, I'd like you to take a minute, take a break, absorb what you've heard, and then let's begin the interactive part of the conversation. Thank you very much.
Oh, isn't this a great gathering? We've got probably well over 100 people here tonight. We're developing our arts corridor for this city, and I want to just say just a few words about that because I'm really excited about what we're doing here. Because we're building the new library expansion. We're going to build an arts corridor from that library expansion all the way down here to the Walton Arts Center area, and we've got the Theater Squared coming on, and people's going to be able to go from the library expansion and walk all the way down or take a bike all the way down to this, what I consider the best performing arts district in the region, the state, shoot, maybe one of the best in the United States. We've got a great performing arts district. We're going to hook all that together, and we're going to have the best arts corridor, performing arts, and library expansion anywhere in the state, and I would say that we'll rival many cities in the United States. And you know who's making this happen tonight? The people are making this happen. The people have come out, they're letting their voice be heard. We're in a design phase, and the people are going to help us design things, and it is going to be a masterpiece. So I'm very excited tonight.
We've worked with the city over the last roughly several years on a number of projects that are important to the city council, the mayor, and his team. And we've been honored to work with them through a number of processes, their planning and management, their strategic plan, and this is an important part of that strategic vision and thinking and the work that they want to see on behalf of the citizens. We got involved in this, again, as the public relations, outreach, and community engagement firm for the city. And I'm pleased with tonight's first public event. We had over 120 participants, and the ages ranged from 11-year-old Calliope, which was very cool, all the way to folks who are in their 80s. And the engagement has been fantastic. We've gotten great feedback, comments. Folks have the opportunity to vote on their favorite memories and thoughts of the past as well as the future, what it's going to look and feel like. And as the mayor said, it's really a partnership with the public. They get to design this very cool space that's going to set the platform and framework for the future of the city in this part of the city's downtown.